Chairman Mike Mullen, thank you very much for joining us.
Good to be with you, Harry.
Let's start with some of the news of the week, especially the WikiLeaks. About Julian Assange, you said this week, and his collaborators, they might already have on their hands the blood of some young soldier or that of an Afghan family. Do you know in this last week of any direct link between these leaks and an attack on an Afghan or on a U.S. soldier?
Well, what I said this week is I was appalled by the leaks, certainly extremely concerned about the potential, very much meant what I said, including what you just quoted of what I said, and specifically endorsed by the Taliban leadership, which has come out in the last day or so and said that they in fact are looking at the names that are leaked, and I certainly think that's an indicator of what's possible. What I don't think people that aren't in the military and in conflict understand is the danger of these kinds of leaks, the ability to net together what is seemingly information that may not be related and then to take advantage of it. And I think it's irresponsible and could very well potentially end up in loss of lives.
Have you all been able to move in any way to protect some of the Afghan informants that were named in these leaks?
There are certainly efforts going on to do that, but I couldn't speak to specifics right now.
But there are efforts going on to do
Well, I think, and Secretary Gates said it earlier in the week, I think we do have a moral obligation, given their exposure and given what they've done, to do all we can to ensure their safety.
In your conversations with the other branches of the government, I know that you don't want any more of these documents to be released. Is there anything the government as a whole can do to prevent it?
Well, there's obviously an investigation which is open and expanding as necessary, and I actually feel very strongly that the release of additional information could continue to jeopardize, as I've indicated. I'm not specifically aware of any action that's been taken in the government to bar anybody from leaking more information.
Also in the news this week is the Army's suicide report, and the number of suicides, the number of attempted suicides are at record levels. Do we really know why, and is there any effective countermeasure that can be done to help bring it down?
Well, the essence of what the Army leadership was addressing was to its own leadership. I fundamentally believe this is a leadership challenge and problem. It continues to grow. The rates have gone up, not just in the Army, but in all our military services fairly dramatically for the last several years. We now exceed the civilian rate throughout the country. It's a very complex problem. I believe, even though there are some that don't, I believe it does have to do with the deployments, the inability to spend enough time at home.
Because statistically it doesn't necessarily match up. I mean, that would be the instinct, but it doesn't really match up.
I understand that. It's just that, again, I've been doing this a long time. I understand the pressures. I see the pressures in families and in members routinely, although there are many who've taken their lives who haven't deployed. So I certainly don't say it's all specifically tied to that, but it's a big factor. And the leadership has got to grasp this. The Army has undertaken a significant study, national level study. There aren't many studies that comprehensively get at this. It's a 5-year study, but it's also producing results early. So there's a tremendous amount of focus on this, as there needs to be. We've got to see if we can turn it around.
Americans waking up this morning and they're realizing that July was the deadliest month for U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan thus far, since the war started in 2001. Some of these Americans, as they're looking at this, are wondering why we're still there and why this war has not been won.
The focus of the President's strategy is really on dismantling, defeating, and disrupting al-Qaeda, who struck us from Afghanistan because the Taliban ran the place and they had a safe haven. They're now moved, for the most part, to Pakistan. And it's a regional strategy that focuses on both Pakistan and Afghanistan. The focus is on securing the Afghan people so that Afghanistan will not be able to return to the safe haven it was for extremists, Al-Qaeda specifically, but other terrorist organizations as well. We left Afghanistan in the late 80s. We left Pakistan in the late 80s, and we find ourselves back there now. And certainly the questions that are out there from the citizens in those countries are we going to stay this time or not? And I believe that we've got to stay. We've got the right strategy, the right resources, and in fact, it hasn't been resourced really until the last year. So yes, it's the most deadly month. Sadly and tragically, we predicted this would be a very difficult year, but we've got the right strategy and leadership, and this, over the course of the next year or so, is really a critical time.
Admiral, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thanks, Harry.